It's witchcraft.
Hey, it's 4:20 a.m., the Stoned Witches Hour.
What time is that?
I
Is that
don't know.
4:20 a.m.?
Oh, God. Okay, I was totally not ready for this.
Okay, folks. Layla doesn't have it together tonight because she smokes too much weed. So it is actually 4:20 a.m. and it is the Stoned Witches Hour. And what we do here is we have fun, but we're like two best friends from different coasts. Well, we weren't really originally from different coasts. That's just where we are now. But I am wonderful on the East Coast. And then guess who's on the West Coast? Guess. Tell us.
That would be me. I'm Layla, your host with the most on the West Coast, with the best weed and the witchiest, scariest stories.
Yeah, but I have the best haunts over here on the East Coast. So yeah, whatever.
And the best cryptids, I've been told. Our listeners do tell us you have the best cryptid stories. So I am going to try and wrest that crown from you. But for now, you are Queen Cryptid.
I am Queen Cryptid, but we've got something to do before we get back into my crazy cryptid tales. And that is our very last Salem episode.
Oh, our last one.
This is a bummer.
It was very much a bummer.
Like, you need to stay and we need to be in the same town all the time. How much fun
I was looking at real estate while I was there. I mean, it's way too pricey for me, but I was looking at it.
And honestly, I think our listeners get a kick out of when we're together because I think we're way more, I don't know, reckless. That's a good word.
Yeah, maybe going to Gallows Hill at midnight on a full moon could be called reckless, I suppose.
What are you talking about? Everybody's doing it. Duh.
Or it could just be called a good time.
Right?
But yeah, we're going to have to do this again because I am not done hanging out and seeing all the sights in Salem. There's so much more to see. There's so much we didn't get to talk about or show on our channel. And of course, I miss hanging out with you. I already miss you.
I know, it's a bummer. And you know, we have touched on a lot of, I don't want to say the famous places, but the famous places.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to kind of talk about some random, lesser known places we visited, places that you just thought were the coolest. We're just going to talk about wrapping up in Salem.
I love it. I think that's a perfect idea. Just to wrap up episode 40.
Oh my God, 40?
40. This is episode
Yikes.
40 of the Stoned Witches Hour. Yeah, and we're still doing really good. I can't believe it. So, you know, hi Israel, hi Ireland, hi
Australia, and
New Zealand.
In my favorite country, England.
That's true.
Don't forget the Commonwealth of Canada.
Oh, yes. No, we have lots of friends in Canada, Poland, Germany, Italy. Thank you guys. Tokyo. Thank you guys so much. There's some more I'm sure that I'm forgetting. Brazil, Mexico, Greece. You guys are awesome. This has been such a trip. So thank you all for joining us and sharing in our spooky stories.
And we hope we make you laugh, at least a little bit. We make ourselves laugh.
Right? That's the important part. And see any cool costumes downtown?
Today, I saw the most amazing vampire ever.
Ooh, really? Like a Lestat type vampire?
Yeah.
Or a sparkly vampire?
No, like a Lestat type vampire.
Ooh, do tell.
This guy, this wasn't a costume. This was an outfit.
Oh, like a vampire came to town and dressed in his best?
Yeah. This
Nice.
was not like I went to Spirit and bought some shit. This guy like had this shit in his closet, I swear to God.
Or in his coffin.
Yeah, right? Like, you know, the ruffly necked shirt.
Ooh, some guys can really pull that off. That flouncy necked pirate type shirt.
But then like his inner jacket had like the flaps pulled up and they went just above that fluffy neck. But then he had like a long black trench coat on with it.
Ooh,
He actually had fangs.
nice. Well, yeah, I'd expect it. How was he walking out during the daytime?
I don't even know how this guy was out during the
Well,
day.
they do have really good SPF sunscreen now, so maybe that was it.
Well, I think he just ate also.
Oh, that'll help.
Because he had like 2 little drips of blood.
Oh, so he must have just fed. And I've heard in some legends that allows them to walk during the daytime.
Well, And I also think that they have like contacts they can put in that blocks out the sun so that they can kind of meld in with society.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
I mean, this guy was top notch. Like
Nice.
he had this like cane, and it wasn't like an old person cane. It was like one of those like thin.
Like you could whip it out and it could be like a rapier any second.
Yeah.
Nice.
Like one of those like ballpoint by the time it's at the bottom kind of thing. This guy was top notch.
I like it. That sounds awesome. I love the costumes you get to see in Salem.
But you know what I saw multiples of today?
Sanderson sisters?
Believe it or not, no Sanderson sisters today.
Wow.
Everybody is wearing skeleton costumes. Men, women, children, big, little, old, young.
I love skeletons. I'm wearing my skeleton sweater right now. I love bones. I think bones are the coolest.
It was like the black one piece with like the rib cage, like actual skeleton, like the leg bones. Multiple people today.
Sweet.
But nobody had like a face mask.
Now, see, things seem to come in waves there. The other day you said you saw a lot of crows. A lot of people dressed in crow costumes. Now it seems to be a lot of skeleton
It was like freaking skeleton day in downtown Salem.
And just the other day was Sanderson Sisters Day. You saw like hundreds of them.
It's been in a way, you're right. Now that I think about it and you pointed out, it has been a wave like that. But I'm looking and I'm like, wow, there's another one. And then I'm like, wow, there's another one. Yeah, like skeleton day in Salem.
Oh, I love that. I wish I could have seen it. But unfortunately, our time in Salem together has come to a close.
Boo!
Boo.
Nobody likes that part.
No. So now that we're smoking separately, I have had to get my own weed again. Speaking of my own weed, I have some very, very purple straw nana. I don't know why it came out so purple this time, but it is deep, dark, violet purple. And I'll have to show you some. But pretty soon I'll be able to smoke on that.
Ooh.
So what are you smoking on over there, Chelle?
Tonight, I'm just smoking some grandpa cookies.
Oh, was this the one that was like grandpa cookies 1 through 12 or whatever?
Right.
This time
I have 12. I think I'm going to call this a sleepy.
It's a sleepy one.
It's a sleepy. It's a little sleepy.
This is from Happy Valley, right?
Right. My favorite.
I remember because I love the grandpa cookies pheno hunt. I thought that was such a cool idea. So they're still doing that.
As far as I'm aware, there has been no results yet.
Did you vote on their Facebook page? Does anyone still do Facebook?
Yeah. Our age group does Facebook. I don't know if the kids still do. I voted on my first purchase. I have not voted on this current batch.
Gotcha. Did you get anything other than Cookies 12, Grandpa Cookies 12?
Not this time because I'm in between paychecks.
Oh, I hear that. Good gracious. Why is weed so expensive? I am so glad that I have an almost done crop. I mean, granted, the straw nana finished earlier than everything else, but I have got some Alaskan Thunderfuck and some...
I just want to smoke something that's called Alaskan Thunderfuck just because of the name.
I don't know if this is really Alaskan Thunderfuck or not, because apparently that's kind of a possibly lost strain, or maybe you can only get that in Alaska. I'm not sure, but that's what I was told. So we'll see how that comes out. And then I have some Gorilla Glue and something else growing that I don't remember. But, I'm really glad that I have stuff ready to harvest because these prices are killing me.
Yeah, right?
All right. So with your sleepy weed and with my sunset cake that I spent way too much money on, my nice little indica. I don't know if you can see my little eyes here. They're like at half mast. So I know it's going pretty good. My little eyelids are all heavy and I'm just all happy.
I think we both got the sleepy weed today.
Sleepy weed. Right before we got on, I was looking through my notes about my man, Giles Corey. And I know one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is where his pressing took place, what our theories are.
Our theory.
Yeah, what some of the popular theories are, what our theories are, and maybe anything that we felt in the different areas. And some of the, like you said, some of the more hidden gems of Salem that are off the beaten path that not a lot of tourists go to, which might give you a little bit of a better vibe. Like, it's fun to go downtown and have the very commercial Salem vibe, to go through the historical buildings and see all of that. I love that so much.
But it's also fun to wander away from that too.
Yes, and I loved having you and your love as guides. I mean, I've been to some of these out of the way cemeteries, but being able to go there with you guys and go on these little hidden side roads where we saw some, what was it, Hoof and Horn?
Hyven Forge.
Hyven Forge. They were beautiful, and they're not on the main strip. And there's just some really nice places that are a little quieter. And in my estimation, that makes it better able to kind of feel the vibe, kind of feel the energy of the place. A little easier without all the noise of the crowd.
There is a place I just want to briefly touch on. We're not going to talk about it a whole lot, and we did not go inside. You started off with your man, Giles Corey.
Oh, yeah.
So we, in our minds, us personally, feel like we have debunked that he had been pressed up on Gallows Hill.
Yes.
So the next theory is that he was pressed at the site of what's currently modern day, the witch dungeon. Now, I'm going to quickly debunk that theory by saying...
Now,
no, go ahead.
Was the witch dungeon Sheriff Corwin's house?
No, the witch dungeon was nothing. The witch dungeon was built in modern times. There was no dungeon. There was no witches and dungeons. Like, this was not a real thing, people. Like, every time, I look outside when I'm downtown and I'm like, the trolley goes by and I'm like, there was no dungeon. So I
do say that, though. I'm pretty sure, even though it's called that, I'm pretty sure most tour guides do tell you that there's no dungeon.
Myself, in my own mind, am debunking the witch dungeon is a current location. But one place I would like to just kind of, we'll talk about how we felt, Howard Street Cemetery. Now, Howard Street Cemetery is one of the theorized places of the pressing, and that is actually a theory that I tend to believe.
I as well.
So the first reason I believe it is because the proximity to the old jail.
Yes.
It's right behind it. They weren't looking to kill him and leave him and throw him in a ditch. They were looking for a confession so that they could persecute him. They weren't looking to just ditch his body. They were right. Looking to keep him.
Now, Giles Corey actually went to jail after his wife, Martha Bright, had been in jail. He actually testified against her, kind of, at one of her trials. Now, back in the summer of 1692...
That's a shitty husband. Can I just point that out? That's a shitty husband.
It is. He didn't really say anything badly about her. He did say that he saw her in front of the fireplace, kneeling as if she was in prayer, but not saying anything. And so they took that as being like testimony against her. He also said that one time he was saying a scripture and she came up to him and said that he had said it wrong. And so she was just really correcting how he had said that particular scripture. But again, they took that as her not wanting him to say scripture. So they would say things that he had said out of context, not necessarily that he had testified against her. They had both been going to the trials prior to this, but Martha Bright, his wife, had become kind of disillusioned of them very, very quickly and realized that something was wrong here, that this was not a good thing.
Yeah, but that made her a target.
Exactly. It really did. So she tried to get him to stay away. And because she was speaking out against it, you're exactly right. It made her a target. And Giles must have seen something coming because he then deeded his land to his son-in-laws so that if he got accused, which he then did, they wouldn't be able to take his land. So what happened with these regular people being accused of witchcraft, you would go before someone and they'd say, hey, we have this evidence against you. These girls say that you came to them in spirit form and made them sign a witch's book. You could either say you were innocent, in which case you would then have to go to trial, or you could say that you were guilty and you were sorry and you would just go to jail.
I have a question.
Sure.
Am I not a witch because I never signed any witch's book?
According to the Puritans, you're not a witch.
Thank you.
I'm sure anything else that came out of your mouth, because I know you, they'd be like, witch! They'd be so scared of you, they would immediately, anyway. But as far as signing the devil's book, no, you are not a witch in their eyes. So what they would do then is, if you said you were innocent, which a lot of people did because lying was a sin to the Puritans, and they didn't want to do that. But if you said you were innocent, you then got tortured by Sheriff Corwin or Judge Corwin or someone there because they were then trying to determine if you're a witch. And
so if you quote unquote are following the law of the Lord and telling the truth unconditionally, you're going to get whipped for it?
Yes, they would torture you.
No wonder they didn't want to be Christians.
Testimony of people having to hold their arms out and hold like heavy weights for hours. Historians have testimony of these boys being tied neck to ankles backwards until blood would come out of their nose. They would whip them. They would do the infamous dunkings where they would kind of dunk you underwater with like a seesaw. And if you drowned, you were innocent, obviously. But if you were able to swim to the surface or come up for air, that must have been magic, so you're guilty. So people who said they were innocent had all sorts of horrific things happen to them, and then they'd be hung. People very quickly were like, yo, I'm guilty. I'm so sorry. I did all that shit. Put me in jail, and I'll get better.
Because it was easier that way.
Fuck, I would say yes. I'm like, oh, let's see. I can get tortured and then hung, and they're going to take all my shit away. Or I can just go to jail for a little while and maybe lose my property, but I get to live. All right, I'm down. I did it.
Especially in those times.
Exactly. So Giles saw which way the wind was blowing, and he also knew, okay, he wasn't possibly the greatest dude ever. He did get in trouble decades earlier for beating, I don't know if he beat him to death or beat him almost to death, but he had an indentured servant, which is bad enough, that he either beat to death or beat almost to death. And so he knew that because of that prior issue, that more likely than not, he was going to get in trouble, and they were going to hang him as a witch and take all his land. He had a bad reputation
already.
Exactly. So I have heard some accounts say that he said he was innocent, and then that was the last he spoke. After you entered a plea of not guilty, they would then say, okay, do you agree to a trial by jury? And that's where he stayed silent.
You have to answer yes to go to court?
That's right. You have to answer yes or no in order to go to court. And so he did something where he abstained from speaking. He stood mute. And so because he stood mute, they couldn't try him. He had to say. And so they were allowed to torture him. Now, at this time, he had been in jail for about 5 months or so with his wife. And so just like you said, my theory has always been they would not have taken him very far away from the jail. If what they're after is making him say, let's go to trial, they're not going to want to go very far. They would drag his ass to downtown.
I think they wanted to make a spectacle of him because of his defiance in admitting. He wouldn't admit it, and he was defiant. He was being the mute guy, so they wanted to make an example. They're not going to make an example where no one can see that.
Exactly. He knew that if he said he was guilty, or that if he went to trial and was found guilty, that they would take all of his property and his family would lose out. He also was a very proud man. And so he would not have wanted to have that kind of stain on him, I guess. He would much rather stand mute and refuse to just go to trial than actually have that happen.
A pride thing.
A pride thing. So they then took him out back, in my assumption, of the jail. And then they placed a board on his chest and started placing stones on it over the course of 3 days. And during that time, he only ever called out for more weight.
And, I think that is, I don't want to say commendable, but that's the thing that sticks out, I think, with him more than, I don't want to say more than any of the other accused. But he was just like, you know what? If you're going to accuse me and I didn't do this, fuck you. More weight, motherfucker.
Yep. And that's what I admire as well. He wanted to help his family. He wanted to make sure that this court that he knew was completely bonkers,
You were either guilty or dead. Those were your options, guilty or dead.
Not only was his name going to be sullied, his family's name would be sullied, and his family would be deprived of the farm and the livelihood that he had built for them. And so his stubborn ass, like you said, fuck you guys, more weight.
Because wasn't he at one point, prior to some of his issues, wasn't he one of the main wood suppliers to the town?
Possibly, yes. I know he had moved to like the southeastern corner into what's now Danvers.
Right.
And he had a large farm there and was quite prosperous.
So in his mind, in the way they thought back then, his legacy and all his future generations were in jeopardy by some dicks.
Exactly. Over something as messed up as spectral evidence.
And I still go back to the whole fucked up thing. You left Europe because of religious persecution just to come to fucking America and persecute religion.
Right?
Like, what the actual hell?
Here's another extremely messed up thing. The lovely church, this wonderful church. What were they? Puritans? I don't know. Some type of Christian. So this lovely church, while Giles Corey is being pressed to death, in the middle of this torture, they excommunicated him from the church. Do you know why?
Because he was a witch. I don't know.
You're close. Because he was either guilty and a witch or innocent and therefore committed suicide because he refused to enter a trial.
So,
so they excommunicated him because, he was either guilty of being a witch or he was innocent, and therefore the torture was considered suicide because he refused to call for a trial.
Insanity.
Right? Is that fucked up or what? What is up with that?
I guess I can't even fathom the train of thought.
Yeah. So he's considered a sinner either way for a situation that he had zero control over. And
do you realize if I was alive during then, I would have been dead. Dead.
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
dead.
Yeah. Yeah. We would have been in big trouble. I'm pretty sure. I would have been out. Like we would have been like that meme where Ned kind of slides back into the bushes. We would have been looking at everybody and you know what? We're going to go visit our sister in California. And we've been gone.
I mean, it was a bad time. And
it really was.
But I do think that old Howard Street Cemetery is more likely the site.
And the reason is because that is where the old jail was, right?
Right. And the Howard Street Cemetery is on the back side of the old jail.
Yep. And it said that he was then buried in an unmarked grave. So odds are his body is in that cemetery unmarked somewhere.
And remember, when we were walking through that cemetery, we went all the way to the left end, and in the very back corner, that's the only place in that whole place. And that place was jammed with graves. Only place where there's no stones. Who's there?
That's right. I was hoping, I know that they have done ground penetrating radar on the old Burying Point Cemetery.
I don't know if they have here, though.
Yeah, I don't know if they have in any of the others. I haven't seen in my research. I'll have to dig a little bit deeper to see if they have. But if I find anything, I'll put it on our Instagram. But so far, I haven't found it.
Here's the thing. Although they weren't offered a proper burial, if you got a cemetery right there, just plop them in and don't mark it. And that's the same as an improper burial. So that's why I was thinking that.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if they ever did find a lot of the locations of the folks' burials. I know Rebecca Nurse is buried at her homestead, which is now in Danvers. But the others, I don't know where they ended up, honestly.
No, there's no way to really tell now. I mean, the families would have done whatever they could under cover of darkness to hide those bodies and give them the best burial that they possibly could. But for many of them, that would have meant someplace, unknown and unmarked far away. It could have been, somewhere else on Gallows Hill. There might be a house on top of it now.
Maybe they got a cool freaking pyre and blaze of glory, man.
I love that idea. I really do. I feel so badly for these people. I mean, Corey's death, it was something that really shocked a lot of people of the town. They were already frightened and scared because of the hangings that had happened prior to that. And this just really messed people up. I mean, at one point, Corey's tongue was bloated and fell out of his mouth. And the sheriff used his cane to push the dying man's tongue back into his mouth. I can't imagine seeing that as a townsperson and thinking that I would trust that sheriff with anything. That just seems so callous.
Yeah, but back then, people ruled by fear.
They really did. And damn, did they have it. None of these people were trained in law. They were just the rich townspeople that get appointed to being on the court.
Or my dad was the sheriff and now he's dead, so I'm the sheriff because my dad was the sheriff. You inherited jobs.
And the accused didn't even get lawyers. They had no lawyers. You had to speak up for yourself. I can't imagine being so freaked out, being accused of being a witch. They're going to take my family homestead away, the thing that we came here for, that we worked so hard for, and trying to then defend myself in a court of law where there's a bunch of girls in the corner freaking out every time I start talking.
Now, was he a threat to the town? Did that have anything to do with it? I'm just trying to, not that I can think of any of their mindset with any of this bullshit, but was he a threat to somebody that they needed to quote unquote get rid of him?
Possibly.
It seems like they wanted to bother some people. It was an easy way to get rid of.
I think you're right. I think a lot of it had to do with they wanted to make an example of him and they wanted his estate. His wife was the first one to start saying these proceedings are not right. You shouldn't be using spectral evidence and you should stop. And he, you know, went to court and testified. I don't think he meant to testify against her. I don't think that was his intention. But when she went to jail, he really woke up and started also speaking out against the court.
Yeah, but as you're well aware of, you might go to court and say left, and somehow they twisted that shit into you saying right.
Right. So all he had to do was say, yeah, I had an oxen die and a cat die. And they're like, oh, well, your wife did it. And he's like, wait, that's not what I said. And
they're like, oh, yeah, you said that. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, and he said that she didn't say, she was kneeling as if in prayer, but didn't say any prayers. Well, people do that shit all the time. Who doesn't sit in front of a fire and just stare at it? I mean, come on. But they, again, twisted his words. But anyway, because he was speaking out against it, and because quite possibly they're drunk with power at this point and taking people's lands and houses and businesses, and he has such a rich farm and such a large estate, you know, often in what's now Danvers, I think it was a combination. I think they're like, we need to shut this guy up, and, you know, I want his stuff.
And this was before America as we know it, folks, the United States of. This was before, what, freaking 90 years before America was America. So I think there was also a big bid for land, power, settlement, because they were in that first group. They weren't the first group, but they were in the first group of what became Americans. So there was a lot at stake, and you were either on the team or you weren't.
Yep.
And that's why I think with him in particular, I think it was more of a vendetta, that he either had too much money, too much power, too much land, and he was a threat to someone else getting further up the ladder, and he needed to be out of the way.
Executed were Bridget Bishop, Sarah Good, Elizabeth Howe, Susanna Martin, Rebecca Nurse, Sarah Wild, George Burroughs, Martha Carrier, John Willard, George Jacobs, John Proctor, Alice Parker, Mary Parker, Anne Pewdeeter, William Redd, Margaret Scott, Samuel Wardwell, Martha Corey, and Mary Eastie, executed as witches. And then pressed to death was Giles Corey.
Just to rewind a second, you know what I found the other day after you left?
What's that?
So I was driving down the road, and it's very trafficky in this region, as you can
imagine. With all the influx of people.
So I'm waiting in traffic, trying to get on 128, and I look over, and there's like an on-ramp and an off-ramp, and then there's like a big patch of like grassy whatever, like in between the on-ramp and the off-ramp and the straight road.
Sure.
I look over to that, and there's a big stone. Who the freak would know? It says Proctor's tomb.
What?
And I was like, I'm like, this is like a fucking weird ass place to have it. It's like in between the on-ramp and the off-ramp. So it looks like what they did was they built the road, the on-ramp and the off-ramp around this little patch of area. And
like around a family tomb?
I don't know. Like it almost just looks like a rock mound. I don't know how to explain this, but there's a sign there that says Proctor's tomb, but it's not in a location where you can really get out of the car and look. It's on Lowell Street, right before the on-ramp to 128.
Let's see. John Proctor Jr. was hanged on August 19th. His body was then disposed of in an unmarked common grave, now lost. Legend suggests that the Proctor family secretly retrieved his body and buried it on the family farm. But Proctor's tomb There's a stone called Proctor's Tomb opposite 310 Lowell Street at the Lowell Street on-ramp to 128. Does that sound right? Local historian and archaeologist Timothy Kendall believes that this is the most likely location for John Proctor's grave. So he says there's a stone called the Proctor Tomb. It's a granite block marked with a sign indicating it was set up in 1821. It's the probable actual burial site of John Proctor, where his sons took his body after his execution on August 19th, 1692. So that is the actual spot of the old Proctor farm where his sons retrieved his body after he was hung and buried it there secretly.
Which would have been, I'm not good with measurement, but we'll call it maybe about a straight shot mile straight down from where Proctor's Ledge is. So they would have basically walked a straight shot, roughly a mile, and then that's where the tomb is.
Yep. So it looks like that's why there's the stone there now.
But I saw that after you left, and I was like, oh my God, I got to tell her.
How cool and how interesting that it's kind of like right in the middle of regular roads, modern day roads.
And you can kind of tell that they made sure to kind of keep the sanctity of it because of the way the on-ramp and the off-ramp and the road is right there. You know how we are nowadays. You just tear through stuff, and they didn't tear through that. And that was pretty cool. But I never noticed it until I just happened to be sitting in traffic and I was like, what the hell?
Well, I guess I was wrong. I didn't realize that they had found it, at least that one. Maybe there's more.
So that was an interesting tidbit, because you would think, being called Proctor's Ledge, that Proctor was buried there. Grant's tomb, who was buried in Grant's tomb.
Well, I guess, they would have had to have buried him someplace very secretly because, you couldn't let anyone know that you had buried the witch, on someplace.
Well, if that was the old location of his family's land, that would make perfect sense. Because like I said, they know that Rebecca Nurse is buried on the homestead that you can actually still go and tour. I think that's where I was thinking before, all familial land. It's just a matter of finding that familial land and then looking for the graves.
Right. Or, some of them possibly didn't have very much land. A lot of these people were destitute. Some of them were very old or very poor. They might not have had land. So maybe they were just kind of taken into the woods somewhere.
Or like that woman that we touched on last episode, as well as one of our early episodes, that just got exonerated within the last year or so. No family. So no one can, if you don't have, who's coming for your body? No one.
Right. Exactly.
So my guess, someone like that, they're probably still at Proctor's Ledge.
They wouldn't have been able to bury them right there because the dirt was too shallow. It was only about 3 feet until it hit rock. But there was a river there at one time, so they could have taken them downriver somewhere, and there was also a road not too far from Proctor's Ledge that they could have, carted them away. So more than likely, they maybe a little ways down the road or a little ways into the woods.
Right, absolutely. But it's just sad because even with your buddy Corey there, I do feel like he was pressed in that Howard Street Cemetery location, and I do think that that's where his remains are. But the sad part is, for as old and cool and creepy as that cemetery is, you would never ever find a stone for him.
No, sadly you wouldn't. And my personal theory had been that he had been pressed outside the jail or nearby the jail, and I had always assumed that was down near Sheriff Corwin's house, which was further downtown. I think closer to where the House of the Seven Gables is. So I had always assumed it was probably somewhere near there. And it wasn't until recently when you had told me that cemetery was actually the site of the old jail that I realized that, that's probably where it happened. So we totally agree on that one. But I had been completely clueless as to where the location of that jail had been in 1692.
One of the things that I find interesting, the old courthouse where these folks were essentially tried, the actual courthouse where the trials were, actually the courthouse was located in the middle of the street right outside my work.
Really? So you had to look right at that space.
Well, it's actually a road now, but if anyone is familiar with the current modern day Salem City Hall, the old courthouse where the accused were tried is like basically kitty corner from City Hall, like right smack dab in the middle of the road.
Oh, wow.
But, as the times changed, those horse roads we had to turn it into a real road and tear it down. But yeah, so if you think of it that way, geographically, where the courthouse was actually only about 2 to 3 blocks away from where the jail was. And then again, that cemetery on the backside of the jail.
Gotcha. Makes sense. You know, who's going to like cart some guy through town all the way up a steep hill to press him up there, only if he says, okay, I'll go to trial, to cart him back down the hill and then back into town. Nah.
But you know, the brutality.
It boggles the mind that people could do that to each other, that they would even consider, like Abigail Williams, I think, was one of the girls. And she said that Giles came to her in a dream and told her to sign a book. And they used that as evidence that he was a sorcerer and needed to be put to death. It's scary that people can go that far for a fiction.
And it's scary that the law followed that shit.
Very scary.
It goes back to, you leave your homeland due to religious persecution just to go to a new land and persecute.
Yeah. I don't understand.
I almost do understand, because I do think you are right in your statement, drunk power.
Yeah, absolutely. They really were.
There wasn't a leader of the land yet, and somebody wanted to make a name for themselves to be the quote unquote leader of the new world.
I guess so. And they certainly had this particular town whipped up into a frenzy. People were turning on each other. I mean, it was terrible. It was a shitty time. Can you imagine 5 years later, or even just like, can you imagine like 6 months later, who's going to go shopping with like this Abigail Williams or whatever? Like, how do you look these people in the eye afterward?
How do you have someone deliver your baby, keep your wife alive through that delivery, and then you kick out the frickin' stool underneath them and watch them go?
Accuse them of witchcraft. And
it wasn't witchcraft when your fucking wife was in labor.
No. Yeah, like in that poem, I delivered his wife of a fine young son.
Yeah, I would have been dead, man. That's all I can say. I would have gone out in a blaze of glory.
And now in Salem, thankfully, that whole history has been spun on its head, and all types of paganism and witchcraft and witches and Wiccans are celebrated. You know, they come from all corners of the country, all corners of the planet. And
they really do. And they're all here right now. I swear to God, they're all here right now.
And we revel in our witchiness. How amazing that not only have these people all been exonerated and the church has apologized. How do you unexcommunicate someone? Like unexcommunicated Giles and Martha Corey? Reparations have been paid.
300 and some odd years later, they had the opposite effect. Because let me tell you, Witch City, USA.
It very much is. And I mean, there was the Boo Bash, and there is always
the Witches Ball.
There's a
Vampire Ball. There's a ball for everything here. You grab a costume, you come on down. You don't even have to go to a ball. Wear your costume up and down the street. Rock on with your bad self. I think what makes it so great here is it's the exact opposite of the history. The history is persecution, judgment, ruining people's lives based on falsehoods. Here, you can walk down the street with your freak flag flying and nobody bats an eye. They're just like, hey.
And it's been like that. When I was first there back in the early 90s, that's when I first met other real witches. Other than a couple online here and there, I had never met another real witch in person until I met these people. And not only are there witches walking around in their cloaks and their witch hats, but there's whole full-on covens walking around and
not getting judged and not getting ridiculed and what have you.
Exactly. And they're studying and they're worshiping together and they're doing magic together. And I wanted that and I loved seeing it. So what an amazing place to reclaim, to kind of say that type of bigotry and that type of closed-mindedness not only isn't acceptable, but we're going to kind of completely flip it on its head and revel in our differences and revel in this type of connectedness and witchiness and earth worshipping goodness, you know?
It's a big fuck you to Hawthorne and Corwin.
Fuck yeah, that's right. That's right. I love that shit. I love that.
But, everywhere you go is just so cool.
What are some of your favorite shops or places?
Shops wise, first of all, you can't beat Lori Cabot's store. Enchanted. It's in the Wharf. Go there, people.
It was
Love Lori
beautiful.
Cabot.
It had all sorts of cool stuff. When we first walked in, it had some wands and items that were made by her daughter, right, Penny?
Yep. Gorgeous. Spell bottles, spell sachets, tarot cards, stone. You name it, it's there. It's gorgeous. Another, you and I had a good laugh. Pyramid. Remember when we were
love Pyramid.
20? So we were like 20 ordering out of the Pyramid catalog. Like, you introduced me to the Pyramid catalog, and it was like eye-opening to me.
That was back when catalogs were the only way to find some of this
stuff.
I
know. and to actually be able to go to Pyramid, which, by the way, they're no longer associated with their catalog store, but still it's Pyramid. I love them. Coons Cards and Gifts, another great store.
They were fun too. I liked their liked their things.
A new store I found with you, that Hive and Forge, digging it.
Love Hive and Forge. It was one of my absolute favorites. I also loved Enchanted. Just amazing shops. The selections that they had, the local artwork that they had, the different items that they had made by witches nearby. Fabulous stuff.
And everybody needs to get one of those sweatshirts before you leave town that says, I got stoned in Salem, Massachusetts.
Yeah, that's always fun. Isn't there one called Artemisia?
Yes. Now, that's a really good store. That's where actually I get my herbs and my herbal tea. So that is like herbal shop supremo in my book.
Yeah, that one's a good one. Let me see if we can get some addresses here.
I know Artemisia is on 3 Hawthorne Boulevard. Enchanted is on the Wharf. Pyramid is on Derby Street. Coons is on Essex Street. You can tell I'm a shopper, folks.
I can tell you like your Salem shopping. I don't blame you. I'd be like a kid in a freaking candy store. And let me tell you, the chocolate
You were
shop,
a kid in a candy store. What are you talking about?
What was that candy shop called? It was amazing.
Okay, so this is actually the oldest candy store in America. And if you don't believe me, Google it, folks. This is literally the name. Ye Old Peppermint Company.
Ye Old Peppermint Company.
Right across from the House of Seven Gables. Amazing
handmade chocolates and candies of all types. The place was wall to wall people.
If you're on a diet, don't go.
Don't go. Oh, so good. What was their address?
They're on Derby Street. I don't remember the number, but they're down right literally across from the parking lot to the House of Seven Gables. If you can find the House of Seven Gables, you can find Ye Old Peppermint Company because it's legit across the street.
And if you have to wait for your tour at the House of the Seven Gables,
go get yourself
some candy. And Hive and Forge in Salem is at 30 Church Street. And it's a little quieter. It's a little off the beaten path. There's not going to be quite as many people outside.
Badass store. It's a badass store.
I loved it. So cool. It has such a great vibe. Definitely loved it.
And I do have to put one little plug, and it's a place we didn't make it to, a food place. If you're looking for some good Mexican and some good margs, Casa Tequila, can't beat it.
I don't know why we didn't go there.
Honestly,
love tacos and tequila.
I think one day looking around, we did, what'd we do, 7 miles? Between smoking and shopping and touring and ghosting, we weren't thinking about food.
Now, I know we also mentioned this other place in one of our other podcasts, but the Black Veil Tattoo Shop with the twins, Ryan and Matthew Murray.
Boston Street. Boston Street.
137, that's right, 137 Boston Street. And that shop was fantastic. Really cool stuff. Also had some local things along with all your regular fun things. A few older Ouija boards I saw that they had for sale as well.
And they're actually one of the most awesome tattoo joints in town.
Love their tattoos. I have since seen the Ink Master, the season of Ink Master where the twins competed. So I know how they did.
Don't tell us right yet.
I won't tell you. Go and watch the season. It was pretty interesting.
We went down by the right out on the opposite side of the House of Seven Gables. We were down at a dead end road, just kind of looking out into the ocean.
Oh, I love that. I sent you the picture.
Those are some of the gems people forget about.
That smoke spot that we had while we were waiting for
Yeah.
House of the Seven Gables. That was a nice spot. I liked that.
And, the old ship, love the old ship. Don't think it's haunted, but we loved the old ship. We sat on the Adirondack chairs. We smoked our weed.
We did not get a chance to go to the ship. We did not get a chance to go to the museum.
Right.
And those are a couple things that I would like to see next time. I'd also like to go.
Come back.
Absolutely. I'd also love to go on a tour. Now, I know we know a lot of it, but it's so much fun to go on a tour and kind of maybe we'll go on one of the haunted tours or something and see if we can learn some new little tidbits. Those tour guides always seem to have the coolest, most up-to-date information on everything from hauntings to history. I love it.
There's one place I've never been, and I'm going to save it for your next trip. I want to go to Danvers to the Rebecca Nurse homestead.
That would be very cool.
You can actually tour inside the house. It's like this whole museum thing. So yeah, that's going to be on our list for next time.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a few more places that we have to go see for sure. And I also want to see if we can, next time we'll have to find a local tarot reader or astrologist and see if we can go get a reading together next time we're there.
Ooh, that would be
fun.
So great. We stopped at one of the filming sites for Hoobie Halloween. Let's see. We didn't do Ocean Avenue House from Hocus Pocus, but you saw the Ropes Mansion. Loved it, didn't you?
Loved it. And the gardens out back were stunning. Bring a book for the little library so you can swap it out. But fun, so much fun. The whole city, there's just something to do everywhere. So many different shops and cool little places. And you just have to check them all out.
You really do. You're definitely going to feel some vibes here. Just don't expect them to be all witch trial related.
Yeah, and if you wanted to go on a haunted tour and see if you could kind of find some of that, out here there's also some haunted Airbnbs there. There's also a few...
If you're looking to stay in a haunted hotel, one of the oldest in America, it is. And I actually, when I first started coming to Salem, I used to stay at this hotel, and it is legit awesome. They even have red velvet on the walls of the elevator, people. The Hawthorne, worth the money. If you are going to come here, get your ass into the Hawthorne Hotel. And it's convenient to walk everywhere.
Yeah, and there's like the Witch City walking tours. There's Black Cat tours, Salem Ghosts. You can check out some of those different tours if you're in the area. Be prepared to put your walking shoes on and see a lot of places, but they'll take you to all sorts of haunted places. Because like Chelle said, I mean, pretty much every building here has a history and has a ghost of some sort lurking about.
And if you go to salem.com website, they'll tell you where all the public bathrooms are.
Always good to know. Always good to know.
Just saying.
But check out the Witch City Mall, which I guess that would be fun. I don't know. I've never been in that.
The Witch City Mall, we'll not call it a mall. Okay, let's just not call it a mall. Let's just call it what it is. It's a walk-through building. But they do have some good stuff in there. One great place if you walk through the Witch City Mall and you like Thai food, the Thai place. And that's literally what it's called, the Thai place.
Nice.
They also have Witch City Teas is in there. And another good one, we should do this sometime. Witch Picks.
Oh, I think I saw something for that. That looks so much fun.
They have all these costumes and scenery, and you can get photos. Oh my God, we got to do it.
How fun would that be? I mean, it wouldn't be complete unless we got our witchy pictures on.
Exactly. And I think a bakery just opened in the Witch City Mall. So
I'm always down for a good bakery.
We are definitely sweet people. We're just talking about the candy store. Now we're all drooling on a bakery. You smoke too much weed.
I do. And the food was half the fun being there. I mean, we ate a bunch of different places and it was a blast. It was really good.
You can find anything here. You can find Asian food. You can find Spanish food, Caribbean food, like whatever you're looking for, it's here.
It's not all, 1692 Puritan food.
No, you can get sushi and a new cauldron. On the same block.
That sounds good. Well, on that note, I think sushi and cauldron means I think we've hit the end of the episode, Chelle. So
right. So we've wrapped up Salem. We've had a good time. We'll definitely have to do it again. Maybe we can gear up and do Salem again next October. But we're wrapping up October, folks, actually, with our Samhain episode, which is going to come out on Samhain. So be there, be square, man.
That's right. We will see you when the veil is at its thinnest on the 31st. And then after that on the 2nd for episode 41 of the Stoned Witches Hour.
We're getting closer to my age on these episode numbers, by the way.
You are all too eager to tell people how old we are.
Young pups.
I don't know, Chelle. I don't know what I'm going to do with you. We are going to do some magic, apparently, because Salem's coming up. It's going to be pretty awesome.
We're going to do some magic. We're going to smoke some weed, and we're going to keep doing ghosties.
That's right. All right. I'll see you on the dark side.
Peace out.
Later.